Hi, I'm Laura Putre, Senior Editor at IndustryWeek. Welcome to the IndustryWeek Book Club. Today we have Andrew Thomas. He's a University of Akron professor, and he is author of The Canal of Panama and Globalization. He's the author of numerous books, including The Distribution Trap, which was an award winner, and actually we talked about like 25 different books. So today I'm just trying to get Andrew on screen here. We are going to talk about his new book, The Canal of Panama, and also I wanted to mention that Andrew's a featured analyst on BBC, CNBC, and the Wall Street Journal. And a fun fact is that Andrew was a principal in the first firm to export motor vehicles from China. Andrew, we don't see you, but can we hear you?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I'm getting a note here that says everyone can see and hear me. I'm in the show.
Okay, great.
So I think we overcame all the technical issues.
I don't have my producer on today. Welcome. I'm glad to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks, Laura.
I just wanted to start out by asking you, what prompted you to write this book, and
Sure.
Why now?
Well, this was a project of passion for me. I've been going to Panama for more than 30 years, and I've been in the international marketplace first as a professor, or first as a business person, then later as a professor and an author. So globalization has been a passion as well as Panama. And I was able to see the transition over those 30 years that I was in Panama. I'm married a Panamanian girl. We have a home there, a whole wonderful life in addition to what we have here in the United States. So I saw the transition of the canal going from the American hands into the Panamanian hands. And then eventually the management 100% by the Panamanians, the expansion of the canal, which was completed in 2016. And so I wanted to write a book that kind of told about that recent history, as well as looking at where the canal's headed into the future, using the canal as kind of a case study in terms of what is globalization looking like. How did we get to where we are in the world today with the global economy, and then venturing maybe as a fool in terms of where we could see some of the macro trends and try to get a better sense in terms of what's ahead of us with regards to the global economy and its development. So the book is kind of looking at the canal as well as globalization in terms of how we got here, and then more importantly, I think even where are we headed. There's a lot of conjecture. There's some hypotheses. Again, it's 30 years of experience, either as a business person or as a researcher looking at these issues, trying to give a sense to the reader, not just what the canal looks like, which is very important, also what the future looks like.
Are there any lessons we can learn from the past that relate to the supply chain issues that we're having today?
Well, by looking into the past, and there's a quote that I came across many, many years ago by Michael Crichton, who did Jurassic Park and the Andromeda Strain. He said, those who don't know history are like, leaves that don't know they're part of a tree. I think history is a great teacher. The Panama Canal, the country of Panama, these were for 500 years. There was a desire to build a canal across Panama. The Spanish first, and other Europeans later. Eventually, the Americans did it, picked up where the French had dropped the ball. But there was a period of time where Panama was the center of the global universe, if you will. The global economy was centered in Panama with the discovery of the Incan Empire and the looting of the Incan Empire, if you will. And Panama, for the first couple hundred years, flourished. With a road network that was built across the canal, was built across Panama before a canal was built. And then we saw in the late 17th century, early 18th century, Panama became kind of a backwater, kind of fell off the grid, if you will. It wasn't that important to the Europeans anymore. Shipping had advanced, railroads were coming. It really wasn't until the building of the Panama Railroad in 1850 that the Panama became, again, the center of commerce for so much, not just of the Western Hemisphere, but the global economy. Then, of course, that was the impetus for the French and then eventually the Americans to build and finalize the canal across Panama. So history can show us that we think that we're immune to changes, and Panama would be one of those examples where at one time Panama was the center of all things. For 150 years, it was forgotten, and then with the building of the railroad and eventually the canal, it once again is such an important part of the global economy, and particularly for the United States and our interactions with the global economy. So history would be wise to. We would be wise, I guess, to revise history and now revisit history. Let me say it that way, and understand that just because things are great today doesn't mean they always will be.
Right. That's a good lesson to remember. What about, the expansion today? What do you see ahead?
Sure. Well, I would. That's a great question, and I think the answer is twofold. First of all, the Panamanians have done a tremendous job of managing the canal. They have generated more net profits for their treasury, because that's where the profits for the canal goes, to the Panamanian treasury. They've generated more profits in 16 years since they started running the canal full time than the Americans did in the 80 plus years that we ran the canal. And it's really a great case study of managerial excellence. They then embarked, the Panamanians, once they received the canal and started managing it much better, they of course embarked on the massive expansion. Anybody who's seen it or read about it, they built another set of locks that can handle some of the biggest ships in the world. That took a long time. It had not been done before. Came in relatively close to budget, a little bit longer than I thought. Still was a wonderful case study, again, I think, in project management and management excellence. The issue was, starting in 2016, there weren't as many container ships moving. And if they were the few that were bigger than the size of the new locks. And in fact, we've seen the shipment of containers, particularly consumer goods, begin to fall in recent years. The savior for the canal has been, and I think this is the way forward for the canal, has been the energy shipments, whether it's liquid natural gas or natural gas liquids, overwhelmingly originating in the United States and going to Asia or the east coast of South America. I'm sorry, the west coast of South America. The three biggest natural gas importers in the world overwhelmingly are China, Japan, Korea. A lot of American natural gas now is headed there, and it's going through the canal. And that's been the biggest growth area for the canal in recent years. And I think as we see the world contracting, as we see globalization in its demise, if you will, regionalization, relocation of supply chains, we're going to see less consumer goods shipped around the world. Less manufactured goods even shipped around the world, particularly through the canal, and that would be a detriment to the canal. That's being offset, though, by the rise of these energy exports from the United States to Asia.
Wow.
So the Panamanians didn't see this coming. Nobody saw the American Oil Revolution. I talk a lot in the book. It was kind of something that just happened as a result of American entrepreneurialism and innovation. At the same time, the Panamanians put themselves in that position where, if you believe luck is where opportunity meets preparation, they did the expansion. The shale energy revolution occurred in the United States, and they've been tremendous beneficiaries of it. And it's something I think that really makes the ability for the United States to be a dominant energy player going forward, having the canal there functioning as it is in Panamanian hands. It's been a great story.
Do you see the traffic there picking up, just with all the fuel, the oil issues going on with like the conflict in
well, that's a great question again, Laura. They had a record year in 2021. There were more transits, there were more profits, the higher tolls were collected. It was a record year for the canal. We have seen, though, some fall off recently with regards to container shipments, and again, that's primarily manufactured goods, whether it's consumer goods or other industrial products. That's being made up, though, by the natural gas liquids and liquid natural gas LNG exports from the U.S. So I think the long-term trend line, it's pretty thick right now. The canal will be much more profitable going forward if the focus is on energy and less on the big container ships that can still transmit the canal, but are not doing it in a great quantity. So as the world regionalizes, as it becomes more regional again and more nationalistic, I think as long as they can keep the focus on the energy going through the canal, I think they're going to be in a good place.
Well, thanks so much for talking with me, Andrew. It's been really great. I just wanted to remind everyone that your book's called The Canal of Panama, Globalization. It's a fascinating history, and we really appreciate having you here and having you contribute regularly for us as well.
Yeah, thanks for everybody who reads the pieces. Thank you, Laura, for allowing me to write for Industry Week. I do appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for letting me do this today. Thanks.
Great. Take care, everybody.